Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com, and today we're going to be going over the Madanovsky Gambit, and this is a variation in the Owens defense. From Black's standpoint, I actually don't recommend playing it. From White's standpoint, you actually could run into it every now and then, and so this video is going to be more about an introduction into the Gambit and how, from White's standpoint, they should optimally play against it, because it looks extremely tricky. And many times, if you don't know how to play it, you may fall into some of their traps. So it starts out with e4, pretty common, and then b6. This is the Owens defense. Most times when players don't want to counterattack in the center of the board, it's usually correct just to control the center yourself. So e4 and then d4. Bishop here to b7, a hyper-modern defense, trying to control the center with their minor pieces, and then bishop here to d3. You could also play knight to c3 to protect this light square that's being attacked by the bishop, but many times players are looking to play bishop here to d3, get their knight involved into the game, castle on the king side, get your king safety as soon as possible. And this is where the Madanovsky Gambit comes into play, and it's with the move f5, and it looks extremely tricky, not something you would expect to see too often. And really the thought behind this is they want you to take here on f5, and then they're going to play bishop takes here on g2, attacking the rook here on h1. Now, unlike a lot of gambits where you may not want to take, there's usually a better line. In this particular gambit, I actually recommend taking that pawn here on f5, letting them bring the bishop here to g2, attacking the rook. If White plays optimally, which hopefully after this video you will be able to, White will definitely be ahead. So from here, the best move is for White to play queen to h5. The only legal option that Black has is to play pawn to g6, and then White's going to capture here on g6. Now, Black pretty much has to play bishop to g7 here. If they try something tricky, knight to, let's say, f6, attacking the queen, okay, well, now we could just take with our pawn here on h7. This is check. The only legal move they have is to take our queen, but that's going to be checkmate with bishop here to g6. The king is just in a terrible spot. He is trapped, nowhere to go. So that's not going to work. Can't bring the knight here to f6. They do, in fact, need to bring their bishop here to g7. As soon as they do, we're going to take here on h7. And then from here, the king's going to come to f8. This is also the only legal move that Black has. So a lot of these are forced. There's not a lot of options that Black has in these positions. This is where White can play suboptimally, but you'll definitely understand how to play correctly. Now, White really should be playing knight to f3 in this spot, but there's some other tempting variations that you could look at. One of those might be, hey, let's go ahead and take this knight here on g8. This is a free piece. Hey, my pawn's going to be taken at some point anyway, so we might as well just go ahead and take with our pawn. We can promote to a queen or a rook. It doesn't really matter. We're forcing our opponent to go ahead and take material right here. But then the problem is, if you look at this position, Black's just going to take this rook here on h1, and so they're also attacking with their rook, the queen here on h5, and so we have to retreat our queen back. Then they play bishop takes here on h1, and then maybe knight to c3. How else do you really attack here? Pawn to e6 to prepare to get the queen involved into the game. This also stops the knight coming down here to d5, very important. Maybe bishop here to g5 attacking our queen, but queen here to e8. And yes, the king does not have any pawns in front of it, but also Black has a fine setup. And I think Black's going to be fine in this game. So if we come back, that's one variation you could look at. Another one might be, okay, let's just keep attacking with the queen. Queen to f5 may makes sense if you kind of look at it, but then you start to think, okay, well, what does Black have here? Knight to f6. This stops the threat. It also prepares for rook taking here on h7, and then you realize this is not really a very good move. The only option you may have, bishop here to h6, but then just rook takes here on h7, and it's very tough to see how White's going to continue. They're also going to lose this rook here on h1. So the best move in this position is for White to play knight to f3. And this is where black has to play correctly just to somewhat stay in the game. White's definitely going to be ahead in this gambit, but if they look at this and say, okay, my plan all along was to take this rook here on h1, that is going to prove fatal for them, because now we can just play the move knight to e5. This is threatening the move queen to f7 checkmate. The only way to stop this is to play the move queen to e8. Any other option they have, it's a pretty quick forced mate. But if they play queen to h8, still very difficult for them to hold on to things. We play pawn takes here on g8, check. They pretty much have to take with their rook here. Don't want to take with the king. You can see that's going to be fatal after the queen takes the queen here on e8. So pretty much have to take with their rook here. But then after queen to f5, the only option is bishop to f6 and then bishop to h6. You could see an exchange here, and then after the king takes, now queen down to h7. You can see the bishop on d3 starting to play into the action here, defending the queen, so forcing the king to move, and now bishop to g6. And this is going to be lights out for black. Doesn't really matter how they continue. Sure, they could take material, and yes, we can take their queen automatically, but we don't have to, because we could take with our pawn here on e5, and you can see the queen is trapped. The queen can't go anywhere, or it is going to fall, and if it moves away, well, then white has the threat of queen to f7 checkmate. So pretty much has to take material, and you can see that is not going to end well. So after we play that knight to f3, they can't really take with their bishop here on h1. They really need to be playing the move knight to f6. This is attacking our queen, so we definitely are going to move our queen, and we're going to move it to g6. Now from here, they have a couple options. Same thing as before. It would be a mistake if they take here on h1, but we are going to play something slightly different than moving our knights. Instead, we're going to play bishop down here to h6, and this is going to be lights out. No real way for them to stop this. You know, they could take with their bishop right here. Queen takes, this is check. King to f7. Knight up here to g5. Lots of variations on how we could finish this, but after king to e8, bishop to g6, and this is going to be checkmate. So they can't really take with their bishop here on h1 after queen to g6. You can see their threat that they wanted all along in this gambit was to play bishop to g2 and then take here on h1, and we are putting them in so many situations where anytime they do that, it would be a mistake and they would lose the game. And that's the whole point of playing as white in this, is knowing that, yes, I will go ahead and allow you to continue down your threat in this gambit, but I'm never actually going to allow you to take the material here on h1. So after queen to g6, they really need to play the move bishop takes here on f3. That knight could be extremely dangerous. They just don't need to deal with it. So after that, then rook to g1. The rook is now safe. Don't have to worry about the bishop taking anymore. They could take with their rook here. This rook on h7 is protected by the knight here on f6. But then the queen just comes back here to g3. And this does a couple things. One, it's a discovered attack. The bishop here on d3 is now attacking the rook here on h7. And also the queen now attacks this bishop here on f3. So that is the Madanovsky Gambit. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, if you see that from your opponent playing the black pieces, it's okay. You don't have to worry if they actually play the move pawn to f5. This is a mistake on their part. You can gladly accept it. Let them take here on g2, and then you can start the attack with queen to h5, knowing that you're actually never going to give up that rook here on h1. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, let me know if there is another video you want me to make a video on. You can let me know in the comments below, or you can always email me as well at thechesswebsite@gmail.com. But thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next video.